The Kharijites, the Hawar in Arabic, they've always been part of kind of the community extremists, right? And they've always been basically, let me put it this way, yeah? You know, in the Quran, I'm going to simplify it to the lowest common. I'm telling you where it's coming from. The Quran, if you open it up, yeah, you'll find there's two kinds of verses. There are some verses that talk about peace, and there's some verses that talk about fighting, yeah? Okay, how do mainstream Muslims interpret these? Mainstream Muslims, when I mean mainstream Muslims, I'm talking about all of the institutions in the world, yeah? So we talk about, even if we talk about universities, Medina University, even Al-Azhar, Deoband University, all of them, yeah? The big universities in the world which have any kind of influence, academic influence, have done one thing, and they've united on condemning, you know, these actions, and they've interpreted the Quran in a so-called peaceful way. So what they'll do, these verses, there's two kinds of verses. There's verses like in the Quran where it says, ومن أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل إنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا. Whoever kills one person, in chapter 5 verse 8, whoever kills one person, it's like the whole humanity. Okay, for less than be for murder, corruption, it's like all of humanity. And there's other verses, وقاتلوهم حيث ثقفتموهم.
And that's schizophrenic though.
No, I'll tell you what. This is everything is. Give me time, yeah. There's other verses. Fight them where you see them, yeah. Okay, kill them. Yes, you're actually right. Or kill them when you see them. That's what it says. Yeah. Okay. And other verses. وَإِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فَضَرْبَ الرِّقَابِ. If you see the disbelievers, then strike them at their necks. Yeah. Okay. Right. You know, their necks. فَضَرْبَ الرِّقَابِ means necks. Anyways, how do you reconcile? But anyways, there's two kinds of verses. How do we as mainstream Muslims?
I just asked you about. I just want to find out with that first.
I'm telling you.
Because this is the inspiration for a lot of people.
I'm giving you the summarized, abridged, easy version. These two verses, mainstream Muslims, Orthodox Muslims, will say that those verses that are talking about fighting regard combatants that are fighting you. For example, in the context of war, and we leave it as that. Those extremists, they say no, since, and this is exactly what they do, say since, for example, the British people has pledged allegiance to its sovereign, they too are guilty of the same crimes as the government. There's been double standards.
If it's a global issue, what would you say the highest percentage of terrorism is in America?
I think, according to Noam Chomsky, I've done research on this. If you include state terrorism as part of the unit of analysis, yeah, then I would say, if you look at the drone strikes, if you look generally if you look from wars from 1945 onwards, from the end of World War II, through the Cold War and into the
I think drones are disgusting.
Yeah, fair enough. So I would say that there's no doubt in anyone's mind, if you count the casualties and deaths that have been committed in North Korea, in Vietnam, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, that America is the leading terrorist state. That's my opinion, and that's Noam Chomsky's opinion, and that's basically
these numbers. It's just the reality.
Yeah.
It's not an opinion. It's
facts. These are the facts. These are the facts. So I'm saying that, look, no matter what ISIS can do, whatever evil they're doing, yeah, whatever monstrosities they're committing, if they continue doing what they're doing for 50 years, they will still not be able to even come close to the numbers that the US have already set the bar so high. The thing is, you look at ISIS now and how they've established their state. That's exactly how the United States established its states about 200 years ago. All right, so they annihilated a population. So I'll say to you one thing. Imagine like 200 years from now, your great-grandchildren or great-great-grandchildren come about and they say, look, I'm from ISIS. And you say, that's a disgusting state. Look how it was founded, yeah? But you say now the world has recognized it as a state. We've gotten our borders now. The United States, the parable of that is exactly the same parable of the United States. They have literally established a state through genocide, through going against their treaties with the natives, killing the people there, and then when they established it, now they believe in something called manifest destiny, which, by the way, in political terminology, if you look at the politics of the United States of America, you'll realize that no president, whether Democrat or Republican, can be elected unless they believe in manifest destiny. What is it? Manifest destiny is the idea of westward expansion, of the United States expanding westward until they basically take over the world. An imperialistic concept that no politician in the United States can get elected unless they believe it.
So do you think there's ever...
This is ISIS.
Do you think
but the only difference is they eat chips and Big Macs and they have Hollywood, and ISIS, they do it in a much more direct and graphic and gruesome and primitive way. ISIS put people on crucifixion and this and that. They kill people, I don't know, they stone them. These guys put them on electric chairs and torture them in a big complex in Cuba that no one knows what's going on behind it.
Do you think there's ever going to be be a point in our world when we can just live in harmony?
No.
No, really.
Yeah, basically, let me tell you the reason, yeah? It depends on your conception of human nature, innit?
Yeah.
Philosophers in the Enlightenment period have grappled with this. If you look at Thomas Hobbes and all of them, the majority of Enlightenment philosophers, they start their philosophy with what is human nature. The majority of them, they say human nature is prone to evil. Okay, I wouldn't say necessarily that that's completely true, but I say there's an element of truth in that. In the Quran it says, فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا, that God gave human being a propensity to good and a propensity to evil. And generally, in الْإِنسَانَ لَيَطْغَى, in chapter 96 of the Quran, it says that human being has a propensity to transgress. So because human being has all of these vices that inhibit him from living a self-disciplined life, where they can just be content with what they have, power and ego and all these things will drive human being invariably to conquest and to overtaking people and to demeaning and subjugating and subordinating them. And that's the human problem. Now what is problematic is if the West takes this human problem and changes the label and says this is an Islamic problem. That's disingenuous. That's why we can't tolerate it, because that will be saying, okay, the Muslims are unique in you're unique in your murder, you're unique in your expansion, you're unique in this, that and the other. I'll say no, we're absolutely not unique in that. We're a big part of the world population, and we're literally sometimes can mimic the same behaviors as other people of other faiths.
But I think what's happening with ISIS is backfiring, because so many Muslims are converted to Christianity or atheism or whatever thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's just...
I think we agree here, that's the
Yeah.
thing. It's because, Connor, you don't get moments of silent agreement.
I know.
And this is one of them, guys, ladies and gentlemen. I think here we both understood that actually, we both agree, you would say, yeah? That really, when you look at the statistics, it's no use falling into the ploy of the right-wing extremists in this country and blaming all of the world's issues really on the scapegoat of Islam. Because if we do that, that's not going to deal with the complexities and the nuances of the reality of the world. What we're saying is, let's take a step back and look at the numbers. You see, and terrorism, let me tell you one thing, right? I was personally just looking at some figures from The Guardian, yeah? And they quoted the ONS, the Office of National Statistics. They were saying that terrorism, in general, like, you know, they have the mortality thing and mortality like numbers and that, yeah? How many people died from terrorism? According to the parliamentary report, in the United Kingdom, about 50, if you add, maybe about 60 people died from terrorism from 2001 to this day. That's about 60 people, yeah? Now, I'm not saying this number is negligible or we should forget about it. It's not only just an attack on people, but it's an attack on the nation. So we shouldn't say like, okay, we should just put it to the side. But what we are saying is this. I went to a speed awareness course because I was speeding, right? I'll be honest with you guys, yeah? And I was speeding on the highway.
All right.
You're right.
I thought you meant speeding as in...
I was speeding. So the guy, the instructor, he came out and he said, you know, the United Kingdom, of all the countries, is one of the best in terms of road safety. And he gave us the number. He said there's 1,760 people in 2016, 1,760 people that die on the roads. 28% of them are motorcyclists. Okay, anyways, this is just a bit too much statistic. The point is, you're more likely by maybe about 1,000 to 2,000%. Now this is a massive number. You're more likely by 1,000 to 2,000% to get run over by a car than you are to be struck by a terrorist attack.
I just want to ask you one more thing, and then because I think we've agreed on a lot.
Yeah.
Why does it say in Islam if you leave that you can die?
Well, the thing is, you have to understand that Islam, when we're talking about Islam now as practiced in the West and these countries, like we're in the West, yeah? If a person or friend of mine disbelieves, yeah, and this has happened actually, a lot of people, they come into Islam, they leave Islam, they come into Islam, this kind of thing, oscillation. We as Muslims, it should be known, we have no right to compel that person to be what to be a Muslim. We have no right to do that. So in the context of the United Kingdom and the West and stuff, there's no way anyone could say that you would even force the person, let alone kill them for doing something against their will. That's just a fabricated thing that some people, because of Salman Rushdie, in the case of Salman Rushdie and the Iranians did not fatwa against him, I think they take that too literally. We have nothing to do with the Iranian regime. So we would say that if anyone in the West, anyone in Britain, anyone in the United States, anywhere here, then if they decide not to be Muslim, then not only do you have to not hurt them or not compel them, but you also have to be kind to them. And that's our position.
Because I've been doing a lot of studying about ex-Muslims converting either to atheism or Christianity, and they're just getting like so many people trying to attack them.
But I agree with you. But you know what? Let me tell you something,
And
right?
you know, can I just say?
Yeah, of course.
Like there might be a lot of Muslims that are having doubts.
Yeah.
Because you know I've read the Quran, and to me it just the way Prophet Muhammad has these revelations when he like with Aisha, with Zayd, and his adopted son's wife. All of a sudden he has a revelation that he changes this, and it just to me it looks a little bit suspicious, and that's why I didn't become a Muslim. But I feel that for somebody born in a Muslim family, the fear of actually thinking, I don't want any more of this, and I want to live. Just because they grow up in Muslim is a very community-based religion, and I think it's just I feel for those people.
Okay, look, let me tell you something,
I
right?
feel for them.
Going back to Noam Chomsky, yeah?
Who's Norman Chomsky?
Noam. He's
No.
a very famous academic that's a liberal kind of
I
guy.
thought you were having a thing about Trump.
No. He's a well-known linguist, professional linguistics, yeah? He quoted one of his books. I can't remember which book for now, but he said that, and by the way, before I quote him, I'll be clear that I personally, and Muslims generally, don't see liberalism or democracy or let's say anything as an ultimate truth of any kind. There are if you put it into a Venn diagram, there are similarities on a practical level between Islam and these ideologies, but we don't see that this is an objective truth in any capacity, right? We believe only Islam is an objective, full truth. Okay? Having said that, we're saying here, since we're playing by the rules of liberalism and we're in a liberal type country, yeah, and most people who would identify themselves as liberal, maybe not with a big L, obviously I'm talking about with a small L. Then what I'm saying here is, he said, going to his quote, that if you don't believe in freedom of speech for the people you despise the most, then you don't believe in freedom of speech at all.
Yeah.
Okay, now what I'm saying, if this is the premise that we're working upon, then not only do we have to stand here in Speaker's Corner and talk about the fact, as liberals, right? And once again, I'm not a liberal, but as yourself and others, speak about the fact that, okay, what do you call it? That ex-Muslims have a hard time.
Yeah.
We also have to talk about the fact that people that come into Islam have a hard time. That's not reported because it does not fit the media narrative. And once again, we have to talk about Muslim minorities being attacked and prosecuted. We have to talk about legislation that's been put through on an EU level that discriminates against certain segments.
What is Britain like?
Huh? Finish off. Go ahead. Well, last question.
Last question. What is,
I meant what you were saying, but yeah, carry on.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. All right, go on.
what do you think Britain is like in Israel?
I think it's one of the best countries in Europe. Yeah, probably if not the best. I don't know. I haven't been to every country.
On a comparative level.
Yeah, on a comparative level. Like, it's probably the best in Europe, not considering obviously Turkey, Bosnia, and these countries which are actually Muslim countries.
Yeah, but not-
I'm talking about Western Europe. From what I know, it's probably the best. Yeah, and what I'm saying is that because Britain is the most morally consistent on a liberal level country in the Western European hemisphere, it should continue being that way by disregarding and putting to the side this, I would say, this poison, this right-wing poison that's coming and
You've got
creeping in.
right-wing in Islam, we've got right-wing in if you can have right-wing in Islam, you can have right-wing in Christianity.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Do you
that.
have that right wing in Islam?
We don't have right wing and left wing.
ISIS
She means that more
ISIS
conservative
yeah.
Muslims and
Well,
liberal
well,
Muslims.
Right-wing here are quite conservative as well. You can have extremes in every faith. But you know what? I just want you to go, as this conversation we had today, I want you to take it back to your brothers and sisters. Because you've got light inside you.
Thank you.
And a lot of knowledge.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Nice to talk to you.
Hopefully we can both enlighten our communities.
Definitely.
Take care, yeah?
See you later.
Bye.